All right, so let's look at the arcs one more time. So I'm going to go ahead. So this is for the tangent line. So I'm always using start and direction. And what start and direction allows us to do is sort of create a line based off of sort of a start point, an end point, and then a directional point. And what we're trying to do is produce sort of a double curve, but these curves need to be, the arcs, they have to meet at that tangent point. Otherwise, you'll have this sort of weird bump. So let me show you both ways, and then let me show you how it looks different, so you guys understand it. Because I think, so if I just did that, and I think I'm close, right? We have this little bump here. I want to show you guys what this looks like in 3D. Don't do what I'm doing yet, although you're tempted to. We'll get to this next week. It's a little hard to see here. Let's do also a little hard to read there. Let's make it more obvious. Yeah, I think I'm too close. I'm going to really exaggerate a bad job, right? So I think it'll be pretty obvious now. So it's a little hard to see here, but you get that crease. Okay. And it's pretty obvious when we look at it here. We get this sort of creased edge, right? So on our profile, it will be obvious that this curve does not turn into that curve the way it's supposed to. That was sort of a prelude to what we're doing eventually with 3D. We're going to start modeling this stuff in 3D. Not quite yet, but soon enough. So if we use tangent, if we use line, and if we shift right click and we go to tangent, and then pick anywhere on the arc, the line's going to try to, as far as it can, become a tangent line, right? So that's why it's sort of rolling around that surface. And again, right now we're sort of free-forming what that might be. The significance of where it's snapping to on the arc is sort of the start point for the next arc. Okay? So if I if I know I want this thing to roll off somewhere there, we can click there. Okay? So we know that endpoint is critical. So now when I do another arc, start end direction, and what I'm doing is clicking, and then for direction, I'm using that tangent line to define how one curve goes into the other. And then if I come here, I can come here and trim this. And now that curve is tangent. Or that arc. Okay? Again, I'm recording this for you guys, so we'll upload it and get it accessible on Blackboard for you. Okay? So far, so good? I'm going to keep on going with this shape. So the next is hatch. So I'm going to go back to layer, and this is where we might start to make another layer, because it's not always just about line weights we're going to get into. Eventually our layers are going to define materiality. We haven't really done that yet, and we're not going to do it for this exercise, for this sort of detail, until we get into the 3D, and then we're going to set up very specific layers for the 3D. In this case, we're just going for a hatch, and then it might be a certain pattern. Okay? So typically we can do hatch and then give it a name. Hatch patterns are typically on the lighter side, so we can maybe make it yellow, because we don't want to overpower the section cut. And the cut part, the part of the section that's being cut, is typically always magenta, because that's representing the cut, right? So where we're cutting the piece. So if we had like a grapefruit and we cut it, sort of the skin is the darkest part per se. And then maybe the second layer of the skin is also dark. And then if we cut through some seeds or something, those might be dark. But sort of the flesh part, stuff which, although we're cutting through in architecture, some of that we don't want to see it. We want to see it as a hatch, right? So like the insulation, hatch patterns might not want to be as dark as the cut lines. So the profile becomes really important. Does that make sense, guys? Like how we start to think about what a profile is. The X's are representing as a symbol that it's wood. It's a hatch pattern. But you would just draw it as lines. That would be, I would probably make that, yeah, either green or yellow. Depends on, we can adjust what yellow means in the sense of line weights. So in the end, it's up to you, but on the lighter side. But it could also be in the middle. Yellow might be too light, and we say, okay, let's make it green. What does that mean? We're going to define what green is. So, and it's going to be well, with a hatch, we'll get a hatch pattern out of it. Okay? So I can make this current. I can make it current by double-clicking on it since I have the layer open, and I can close it. So now my hatch is active, right? So if we type in hatch, we get this, and we're always going to settings, right? So we can pull up. So I like typing in hatch and then pulling up the settings. You can see as soon as we type in hatch, we get the same settings here. Okay? I like to see it more as a dialog box for some reason. Okay? So if we click on settings or type in T, we'll get that. And then we have a whole bunch of different set layers. So under type and patterns, under type, we have predefined. If we click here, we'll get the predefined. But then we also have the ISO, and we have other predefined, and then we have custom. So other predefined, we might find what we need. We have user defined, and then we have their custom ones. Again, I would for now just use whatever you can in here, and if you can't find one that matches, like the wood one, we'll just draw it. Okay. Making your own is a little bit complex, like writing a little custom part, which I think right now is not smart. But you can see we have like gravel, right? So that's one that's fairly organic. Unfortunately, we do not have wood. If we look at gravel, we pick that one. It's basically repeating, right? It's a sort of swatch that's repeating. So if we click on pick points for add, we can pick points by clicking within the shape. So you see how it adds the stone in there? or in there. We can also select objects. We can pick objects and select objects. Just properties, or you can just select them and go pull down and switch them to hatch. Yes, the same way. So the question was, if we have the wrong layer, you can change it. So let's look at, you guys are having some issues with sand. And for me, that's too small, right? If we come here and double click on it, we also get some settings for scale. So we can scale it down. So the scale is where we want to change the pattern. So let's do that again. Hatch, T, pick points. We can go back to T and change the scale, right? If we click preview, we'll see it. Hit escape, it gets us back out. I want to make it smaller. Preview it. Hit escape, will take us back. If we're happy, we hit OK. And now it's a set hatch. Is this making sense? Is this answering some of the issues? One of the other issues you guys were having, like if we draw, it seemed like we draw a line and we're not quite there, and we type in hatch, and I pick in here, you should be getting two lines that tell you, circles where those are open. If that's not working, I'll have to take a look at why it's not doing it. Evan, is that what were you getting the red circles? Just not happening. And you zoomed in on the corners, and it wasn't. It could have been a scale issue then, potentially, that it was so big. Hold on, let's see. Asia. So let's look at the preview again. If I type in hatch, type in T or click on settings. If I add points, I click in here. We typically see the preview there. And then if I go back to T settings, I have my preview activated. So if I change anything, I can preview it. And if I hit escape, it gets me out of it. It's a lot of button presses. It's maybe more live here. The reason I like the ribbon, you don't get to see all the patterns the way you do here nicely. And I'm old school. This is the old school way. Which pattern were we using, Annika? Which one was it? Under the predefined?
No, under the AMCF.
I don't think I... $31, okay. So here, you know, my shape's probably really big, but if I make the scale really small, it starts to read as a solid, right? Make it even smaller. Looks like a solid. So that's, the lines are so close together they just meshed into a solid. So if I change that to 3, it gets bigger. Okay? So the scaling of that is important. And we can change the angle. So if I change the angle, I can make it vertical. So there's an angle setting here as well. And then we hit OK. Okay, sounds good. More questions on hatch before we... Yeah, so if there's splines, so if we come here, I'm going to erase this, and I'm still going to stay on the hatch layer. The spline command allows me to sort of make these free form lines. And we can try to replicate the wood pattern. Basically, they're not arches. They're splines, so they're much more complex. They're based on different types of geometry, which is calculus based. Okay. Remember, we talked a little bit about last time, but not that much. So it's a line that's to recreate it to recreate it in real scale. Becomes a little trickier. So that can be my wood pattern. So spline, and then I can come and trim all the lines. Trim, spline, S-P-L-I-N-E. For the insulation, the easiest way to do the insulation, if we know we want to do the bad insulation between here and there, if you guys draw a line so 2 lines, trim command, and then I go circle like 2 points. And if we look at, the bad insulation sort of goes up, right, over, up. So we need to offset that based on, so we're going to copy, I'm going to use quadrant. Circles have quadrants. I can copy this to there, and then I can copy this again from a quadrant. I'm actually going to move it to there, and I can use a move command. Oops, to perpendicular. So we can do then is start to draw. We need to move this one up. Center to center. So I can draw lines that are tangent. And that didn't work. Because it must have went to that line, huh? So tangent to tangent. Okay. So this is looping that way, and then back that way. What's that? Yeah. I think so. Oh, in this case not. No, it's not. I don't know why I went on that side. Got the wrong side. So yeah, it's not exactly where they meet. So then we can start trimming out. This making sense? And I can use the mirror command. Trim this one out. And I can get rid of all this. And then start copying this. And I can start copying it based off of, in this case, if we went center, can't go center to center there. Unfortunately, I think we need to know how tall this thing is to be accurate. So I'm actually going to copy this, and I can go from quadrant to quadrant. And then I can copy this. Actually, we didn't need that. We could just run quadrant to quadrant. Now, one thing, the way I'm doing this, I'm doing it quite sloppily. So we're getting a lot of double lines. So a good command to get rid of double lines is called overkill. If we type in overkill, it'll quickly delete all the lines for what we selected. And we hit OK, it just deleted all the extra lines.
Does that go for multiple layers too?
Yeah, just delete all the lines that are laying on top of each other.
So even if you have like one on layer 0.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so overkill is the command. Then you can figure out where this thing sort of replicates itself, which is there to there. You can join this, copy it, right? So this becomes the bad insulation. It's basic geometry, right? All the drawings that are representing something is just using basic geometry. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop this video there, and we're going to look at